Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens like manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this
I'm
dude
sure
into a bad
I'm sure
motherfucker."
if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you
Yeah,
talking
but
about?
if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman.
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 42 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. This week with me, I have one of my favorite reoccurring guests coming back to the show, Sri Ram. What is good, my man?
Not much, except being here is pretty nice. And, ton of UFC events, ton of fighting this weekend, so
Yeah, you
won't be bored.
You got that right. Two UFC cards along with KSW and Bellator happening this weekend. Unfortunately, we won't have time to talk about or really get into KSW or Bellator, even though the cards looking pretty good. There was just so much on the docket this week with the UFC. 22 UFC fights going down in about 24 hours, or within 24 hours of each other. We're recording this Wednesday night. It'll probably be out by Thursday, so you guys will have a day and a half, 2 days to hear about these fights. But before we talk about the fights this weekend, we're going to rewind the clock and talk about the UFC Beijing card that went down this past Saturday morning. The prelims were on way earlier than like 3:30 in the morning, so those are a little bit too much to wake up for, and didn't have enough time to rewatch those because I was taping so many fights for this week. So we're just going to stick to the main card to keep this one short and snappy. So starting off, the Leech Li Jingliang defeating David Zawada via front leg side kick and some ground and pound in the third round. What did you think of the Leech's performance in this one?
It was pretty decent outside of the first knockdown, just because, Jing Liang's always been a really slow starter, and he's never been particularly defensively good. That's why he's been known as such a fun fighter. He can take shots, and he, comes back with venom. And I had not a big play, but I had a decent play on Jing Liang by TKO. It was plus 335. So he saved me there in the final minute. He got it officially 4 minutes and 8 seconds into round 3. So thank you for that, Lee. And Zawada made a decent impression of himself like he did against Danny Roberts. But this is kind of falling upwards for Zawada, considering that, this was another replacement fight. Jing Liang was supposed to fight Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, and Zawada stepped in just like he stepped in against Danny Roberts. So he's probably staying. Not a bad performance, but Jing Liang just proved to be a little bit too physical and a little bit too offensively punishing.
I bet you thought for a good while there that bet was toast heading into the scorecards, but he did pull that shit off. Unfortunately,
that was nice.
I can never forgive Li Jingliang. I remember I was like so hype on him after he knocked out Bobby Nash. I bet on his knockout line against Jake Matthews, and like I was expecting it to open up in like the plus 200s, and it opened up at plus 400, and I went crazy and didn't even come close to hitting. So I did bet him again, just like his plus or his minus points in this one, and I was kind of sweating that too. Like you said, that knockdown in the first, I think Zawada probably won the first, but Jing Liang came back strong and won the second and third. I don't think of my plus points. Go ahead.
Jake Matthews is just someone like I think I think I have a little bit on his opponent this weekend, but it's just he's way too unreliable, and he kind of screwed me against Jing Liang when he sort of just realized that he was bigger and stronger than everyone else. So what can you do?
Yeah, we will talk. That's a great fight. We will talk about that matchup coming up later. And next fight we had Song Yadong defeat Vince Morales via decision. Song Yadong just showcasing his very matured striking for such a young guy. Vince Morales is he hung in there pretty well. He looked like he had some decent cardio and was pretty tough. So decent debut for him, but unfortunately he ran into a pretty surging prospect in Song Yadong.
I don't really have any, monumental takes on this fight. Song Yadong is a decent prospect, probably the best Asian prospect at this point, considering how badly Li Jingliang has made a count of himself after that Matthews fight with the eye gouges. But Song Yadong, he's athletic. He showed that he has a decent opportunistic submission game against Barrett Kandare, my countryman, and that was a source of eternal. No, not really. But Song Yadong, he looked good against Vince Morales. I actually expected him to sub Vince Morales, but I didn't put any action on this fight because Vince Morales, he looked decent against Domingo Pilarte on the feet. He just seemed a little bit too panicked to get up in that fight and got RNC'd. So I figured it'd be a sub, but both guys making a decent account of themselves in this.
You said it best. I agree with everything you said. He's a good fighter, but he's nothing. I don't think anything special. The one thing I did say is the best prospect, the Asian prospect you forgot, is the Asian sensation Andre Sukumtata. I kid. Um,
I mean, Sukumtat, he's legitimately talented, but it takes like a really great talent who's really, really like stupid to get three knockdowns in a fight, lose the fight, and then get a 30-26 while throwing away every single possible opportunity to get the knockout.
yeah, he's dumb. No other way around it. Co-main event. We had the Reem, Alistair Overeem, come back with a great win over Sergey Pavlovich via vicious ground and pound knockout in the first round. I thought that Pavlovich was out after maybe one or two shots, and whoever the ref was for this fight let him take like 6 to 8 more vicious hammer fists for no good reason. So good thing the Reem looked back to speed. Pavlovich looked nothing like he did in his previous fights. USADA definitely got to this guy. He was stiff and slow, and he couldn't take a shot, and his cardio looked bad. Nothing like his fights leading up to this. Undefeated. So guarantee USADA got to him.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree. Pavlovic is from Fight Nights Global, which is a pretty reputable organization, but he also hadn't beaten anyone that I consider particularly good. I don't follow Fight Nights Global too much, but I know a few names, and Pavlovich hadn't really been too impressive in his previous. I expected him to get blown out against Alistair Overeem, which made me pretty shocked when Overeem opened up as the underdog. It really seemed like people were just waiting for Overeem to lose to someone that isn't very good, but has pure power as a heavyweight. But Overeem made a good impression here, tripped Pavlovich to the ground, and yeah, I think Pavlovich was out like with the first shot. He just flattened out when that overhand landed on the ground, and Overeem just beat the crap out of him once he was out. So that was a bad stoppage, but it's nice to see the Reem back on track.
And moving on to the main event of the night, we have the Predator, Francis Ngannou. I just like saying Ngannou better than Ngannou for some reason. Defeated Curtis Razor Blades via knockout in the first round, 45 seconds in. A massive overhand right that landed on the back of the ear of Curtis Blades that knocked him off equilibrium. And then Ngannou landed some following up strikes, and the ref of this one, good stoppage, I think, in this one. I think Mark Goddard was the ref, but I'm not 100% sure. He got in there and weighed this one off. The second Curtis was out of it. So good stoppage, and nice to see Ngannou back on track. And honestly, didn't expect it at all. I thought he was going to get wrestle fucked like he did, look tentative like he did in his past couple fights, but man, what do you have to think about how can you explain the Derek Lewis fight then after you saw this performance? Do you think that there's a little more suspicion about that fight after this fight?
I wouldn't say so. I actually, and I don't mean to brag, but I do mean to brag. But I actually called this pretty well in both my bets. I had one on Ngannou and one on Ngannou ITD. So I pretty much saw this happening as soon as I saw how badly Blades is defensively. I think the one thing that people don't realize about the Ngannou Lewis fight is just they don't give Lewis enough credit, right? And they don't give Miocic enough credit. Ngannou, he comes out and swings, but it takes some very specific traits to really neutralize him. Stipe had the defense, Stipe had the outfighting, and Lewis just had the raw power. You can't exchange with Lewis, and Lewis dinged Ngannou, and people forget this. The one big shot of that fight rather, was Ngannou getting dinged with a big right hand from Lewis, fairly early in the fight, and Ngannou just got the yips. He got the yips from that one right hand. You don't have to be afraid of Curtis Blades' hands. We all knew this. You have to be afraid of the reactive takedown when Ngannou swings wide. But Blades has had the reactive takedown in their first fight, and Ngannou just didn't give a shit. Ngannou just kept swinging. So I figured that Ngannou would get the knockout here just because Blades is really bad defensively, one, and Ngannou was able to pretty much tag him at will in the first fight. And I don't think it makes the Lewis fight suspicious. It's just that Lewis is a very, very unique threat.
Speaking of threats, honestly, the thing that I'm thinking about this is that the African mafia of some sort saw that Derek Lewis by decision was paying 10-1, and Derek Lewis's money line was paying 3-1, and they invested all of their whatever drug money the African mafia sells or profits from, excuse me. They'd use that money to bet on Derek Lewis and threaten that they would, kill all of the villagers in Cameroon, Ngannou's home country, if he didn't throw the fight. But, that's out there. That's out there. Sounds legit.
I mean, it's the sort of thing where it's really easy to underestimate Ngannou after that fight. He was at plus 185 for this fight. He was a plus 185 against a guy he's beaten before, against a guy that's gotten hurt in his last two, and against a guy that was pretty much neutralized in wrestling by what's his name? Oatmeal Hand Truck is what one of my boys call him. But that was his really bad fight at UFC 213. Curtis Blades didn't look unbeatable, and I had some doubt obviously because Ngannou was really bad on the ground against Stipe, but I didn't think that Blades could survive an uninhibited Ngannou for very long.
Yeah, you picked it a lot better than I did, I can tell you that. So, moving along to the first card of the weekend, UFC Beijing was, there was actually looks like a lot of good finishes on the early fights, a lot of submissions. I like submissions a lot. I'll have to go back and catch those fights when I have a little more time. But we're going to move things along to the Ultimate Fighter finale going down this Friday night from Las Vegas, Nevada at 10 p.m. on, I believe, Fox Sports 1 for this one. I believe there is 11 fights for this, but am I wrong in saying that one is not announced yet? Or is that, I feel like they're waiting for the TUF episode to air probably right now, and I think that after that one more fight will be announced, but I'm not sure. I think, but right now we have 10 fights on this card, and do you know about that, Sriram, about the 11th fight?
Yeah, 9 fights show up on the UFC website, but there's the Ultimate Fighter finales at heavyweight and women's featherweight, and I wish that I really regretted them not being announced, but the Ultimate Fighter has been a bust for a very long time. So, I mean, there's enough interesting matchups on this one that we can kind of...
Yeah, I imagine that there's the featherweight fight is tonight. I believe the heavyweight fight is set, and we'll probably have one more fight to go over tomorrow or something, but I probably won't pay any attention to that. Moving on to the first fight of the evening, we have Raoni Barcelos, who is taking on Chris Gutierrez. Barcelos is 12-1. Chris Gutierrez, making his UFC debut, is 12-2-1. Now, for the betting line that we have on this one, Raoni Barcelos opened up as a minus 245 favorite. Chris Gutierrez at plus 175. Now, people betting down Barcelos a lot. This went all the way down to minus 475, and Gutierrez up to plus 380. I honestly agree with this line movement. Barcelos is a killer. He's beaten UFC level guys before. He especially his last fight with Kurt Hollebach was a really, really impressive knockout in that one. He also has wins over Bobby Moffett and Dan Rep. That Bobby Moffett win looks a lot nicer now that he's coming to the UFC himself and gotten that win over Chas Skelly. So and Chris Gutierrez, very very little footage on him, unfortunately. He's fought an LFA who doesn't really release their fights. They release like snippets and highlights, 2-minute highlights or something. Hard to get a good feel from that, and a lot of random promotions here and there. So not really much tape on him. So I'm kind of I guess underestimating him a little bit because I haven't seen too much. But I really expect Barcelos to get this one done.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the line is as I don't think I wouldn't cap it as wide as it is, but that's mostly because I don't generally cap fights at minus 475 plus 380. Generally, I think fights are a lot more volatile than that, but I mean, it makes sense considering Barcelos got a legitimately impressive knockout last time, and unless I'm mistaken, Gutierrez is a debutant, so I don't expect people to have too much footage. Barcelos should get this one done. If there's value, it's probably going to be Barcelos inside distance, but that's still at minus 125. So the expectation here is for Barcelos to get it done and get it done impressively.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I actually threw him in a parlay, I believe, with two other like minus 400 favorites. I believe Tyson Pedro is one, and then I wonder who the last one is. Let me think. Is Magolov, Demir, whatever that guy's name is. Yeah, I'm counting on Barcelos to get this one done. Next
I
fight.
mean, it's weird.
Go
My
ahead.
parlays have hit, but I've never really gone all in on them. It's like my last few parlays have hit actually, but I'm just never really confident enough to actually go for parlays consistently.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I mean, they are kind of pseudoscience a little bit. You think you're getting a little more money than you are, but they're
I
still
mean,
fun.
if I'm gonna go for parlays, it's probably just gonna be like 20 legs of fight is not a draw, just so
Yeah.
that I can get plus odds.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, I was about to. We should do a parlay with all 23 picks for this weekend. Um,
The only one I'm comfortable making there is legitimately just fight is not a draw.
I guess they would all stack
All of
up
them.
theoretically. I don't know if you could do that though. 23 legs in a
Yeah, they're all minus 25,000 or approximately, and if you add them all up, and I'm actually trying to work that out now because that would be hilarious. But I'm adding them all up now, and you actually get uh, closer and closer to minus 1,000, which I guess is value, but not really.
If there's one draw, you're fucked. I bet you the 5 diamonds would limit you if you actually got close to plus money. Um, but moving along to the 170-pound welterweight division, we have Tim Means, who is 27-10-1, taking on Ricky Rainey, who is 13-5. The betting line for this one opened up Tim Means as the favorite at minus 185, Ricky Rainey as the underdog at plus 145. And people are trusting Tim Means all the way down to minus 370 in this one. Ricky Rainey shooting up to plus 310. I don't really know if I agree with this one. I think that Tim Means is the better fighter, and he should be favored in this one, but he's not very consistent. He's been known to shit the bed from time to time. Ricky Rainey obviously is not that great either. He lost his last fight to Sultan Aliyev, I believe is the gentleman's name. I could be wrong. Let me double check. No, it was Muslim Salikov. I'm mixing up my Russians here. Muslim Salikov knocked him out with a pretty nice punch in that one. That was his only UFC fight so far. But he doesn't look terrible. He's a competent enough striker, and Tim Means is also a good striker of his own right. But I could see Ricky Rainey possibly clipping Tim Means in this one and getting the finish. But I would honestly cap Tim Means more around minus 200. So I guess that means there's value on Rainey.
Yeah, I'm feeling about the same way. I don't really feel strongly about Tim Means one way or the other. I remember he lost the decision to Sergio Moraes that everyone was crying robbery, but I didn't actually feel strongly about that one either. I mean, it was probably a bad one, but I didn't feel strongly about it because I figured it was Brazil and Sergio Moraes was swinging his heart out. He had the will, if not the skill. But he's very good, and Ricky Rainey has not proven to be that good considering. I mean, the Salikov loss wasn't that bad. Salikov is a legit Sanda practitioner. I think he's been a champion in that sport, and it's pretty legit. But he also popped under USADA, if I'm not mistaken. So Rainey deserves the second shot, but Tim Means is a tough opponent for him. I might put like half a unit on Rainey, but I'm not sure. He's a plus 310. Might be worth a stab if Means just doesn't show the sort of urgency that he failed to show at the Moraes fight.
I think yeah, very possible that he could pull this one off. Honestly, it's will probably be I don't think there'll be live betting for this fight actually, unfortunately. But I would say it actually could be a good live betting spot. Um, Moving along to the lightweight division, we have Roosevelt Roberts, who is 6-0, making his UFC debut, taking on Daryl Horcher, who is 13-3. The betting line for this one opened up Roosevelt Roberts at -185 to Daryl Horcher at +145. People betting down the debuting fighter Roosevelt Roberts to -320. Daryl Horcher is up to +260. Again, I don't know if I fully agree with this one. I think Roosevelt Roberts should be the favorite, but making his UFC debut, he's fought decent competition, so I'll give that to him. He's got also a good amount of amateur experience. He looks like a great grappler. He took on the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. He took his dude down, choked him out. Really had good takedowns, good top control in that fight. I don't think there's anything too special about his striking, and Daryl Horcher, I believe, is a wrestler of his own right, and I imagine that if he tries to take the fight to the ground, Roosevelt's ground game will probably negate it out, I believe. So it's obviously Roosevelt's fight to win. He's coming in here making his debut. Horcher is 1-2 in the UFC. He'll probably get cut if he loses. His only win is a split decision over Devin Powell, which is not very impressive. So I think that Roosevelt Roberts will get this one done. But man, the price tag on Daryl Horcher, I definitely don't diss any plays on that 3-1 odds on Horcher.
I mean, I would. Even if Robert should be a favorite, it should be closer to like -150. This is just the classic Dana White Tuesday Night Contenders hype machine. We're seeing it also in the main card, but I don't think Roosevelt Roberts is proven enough to be a -320 against a pretty UFC tested guy in Daryl Horcher. I mean, Horcher didn't have a close to a great performance against Khabib Nurmagomedov, but he fought Khabib, and he fought Powell, and he has a couple of decent performances sprinkled in the UFC that weren't all wins, but they're decent performances. And I think that's enough to say that he's worth the play at +260. Neither of them have a particularly refined game, but I can't really justify the pricing on Roosevelt Roberts, not even close.
Right with you there. So moving along to RIP, the flyweight division. Joseph Benavidez, who is 25-5, taking on Alex Perez, who is 21-4. Man, I believe this is going to be one of the best fights all weekend for sure. I think it's in my top 3 most anticipated fights for sure. We have Joseph Benavidez opened up as the -195 favorite. Alex Perez all the way up at +155. The line has since flipped, and we now have Joseph Benavidez at +110, Alex Perez at -130. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on this one first, Sriram.
It wouldn't surprise me if that was a line error just because their last fights were so different. But I mean, it makes sense to start out to say that Joseph Benavidez is the favorite, but he also looked really, really bad against Sergio Pettis as long as Sergio Pettis wasn't actively willing to let Benavidez back into the fight and grind out what could have been a win for him. But Alex Perez is impressive. Alex Perez is absolutely awesome. He's probably, after Davison Figueiredo, he's my favorite flyweight to watch. And his performance against Shorty Torres was he just destroyed that man. And Shorty Torres isn't great. He was losing against Monkey God before the meme slam, but just cut through that man. And he had a Darce choke against Carl John de Thomas, I believe. that was also pretty impressive. So Alex has a well-rounded talent, and I think he should take out a pretty clearly physically declining Joseph Benavidez here.
I think I'm going to go in the contrary to you. I do agree with some points. Perez is one of my favorite flyweights. Like you said, that last performance against Punching Bag Torres was just limiting 96 punches in one round. I think he landed. Or some insane statistic like that. So that that made me a fan of him for sure. I also think he's got a background in wrestling, so the dude is very well rounded. But man, I'm gonna disagree with Joseph Benavidez. Man, he shocked me. Although he was dropped by Sergio Pettis in their last fight, I think he recovered really, really well, and I think he might have won the latter rounds. And that fight was split, and I'm gonna pull up my trusty MMAdecisions.com, one of your favorite websites on the internet, and check out the scorecards from all of our friends in media. For this last Benavidez fight, I remember it being really close. Let's see here. We got about half and half of the media saying it's 29-28 either side, but actually most of the fans agree that Benavidez won that. But what do those guys know? But I'll have to go back and rewatch that one because
What are the media now?
right. Where are their credentials? I think it's going to be close. This one, it all depends on if Joe Benavidez can stop Alex Perez's pressure. If he can, back him up with some punches, hard punches of his own before Benavidez, or before Perez gets his tempo up and starts, using that volume, putting the pressure on him. I can see Benavidez, wilting, but he would have to hurt him with a punch and just keep that pressure on him. It's going to be hard to do. It's going to be a lot harder to do than Shorty Torres. So I'm gonna go ahead.
First of all, this MMA decisions thing, it's pretty surprising that no one had a 10-8 for round one for Pettis. It's all 10-9s, which is actually pretty shocking to me because I thought it was a pretty obvious 10-8. Pettis had him almost finished. Benavidez was done. But I also think that fight makes it easier makes it clear that it's going to be fairly easy for Perez to start fast. Perez started super, super, super fast against Shorty Torres, and Benavidez is a lot better than Shorty Torres in pretty much every aspect, but he also looked really rusty against Sergio Pettis, and he might have shaken that off during the fight. We don't know, but we also don't know that that it isn't just a symptom of physical decline, that he has to take some time to warm up into the fight, to read his opponent's timing, and he can't just get into it like he used to. So I think the Pettis fight just kind of helps the impression that Perez might just buzzsaw him early.
Yeah, that's an entirely plausible scenario. But I honestly, when I saw Perez open up as the dog, I wish I placed some money on him, but honestly, after thinking about it, I actually decided to place a unit on Joseph Benavidez as the dog. So I think it's going to be a tough fight, but I think that his fight IQ and just like how well he adapts in fights is going to be a big factor in this one. Obviously, in round one, I would probably favor Perez, but as the fight goes longer, I think that Benavidez will take this one over, possibly win the decision, and probably look to live bet this one.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit on Benavidez at dog odds just because I think that there's a decent chance that the Shorty Torres fight doesn't entirely capture how Perez would do against a guy better on the feet. Both guys seem relatively even wrestling-wise. Perez has a pretty underrated wrestling game that's been gushed about by my boys on Twitter. But and Benavidez has always been a very, very strong scrambler and grappler, so that could be a fun area for the fight to go. But if it stays on the feet, it's hard not to favor Alex Perez. It's just that there's obviously some doubt there. This is a very, very, very interesting fight.
Yep, like we said, looking forward to this one a lot. And the next fight, another good fight for different reasons, not competitive-wise. We have in the featherweight division, we have Rick Glenn, who is 21-5, taking on Kevin Aguilar, who is 15-1. The betting line for this one opened up as Rick Glenn as the underdog at plus 125. Kevin Aguilar making his UFC debut at plus 165. The betting line has since they're about pick 'em right now. Kevin Aguilar -115, Rick Glenn at -105. I agree with where the line sits at currently. I have a little bit of play on Rick Glenn at plus money. Rick Glenn, he's a grindy fighter. He's got a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of striking, and I think he uses that well. And to squeak out decisions. His last one, who was that against? Do you remember?
For Rick Glenn, it was Dennis Bermudez, right? In
Yeah.
Boise.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He toughed out a decision in that one. We'll have to check the MMA decisions to see what the people are thinking on that one. But the funniest part about that fight is when Dennis Bermudez was about to go up to the microphone to say something after losing his third split decision in a row, and he just he just opened his mouth and then turned around and walked away. I don't even want to say it. But Kevin Aguilar, man, this dude, I watched him on tape, man. This guy looks terrible. He's got no takedown defense. He doesn't know how to get up off his back. His striking looks awkward. There's just nothing really good to say about him. So just based on that alone, I'm gonna go with the guy who's tested in the UFC, who picked up probably the best win of his career in his last fight, and I'm gonna side with Rick Glenn in this one. What do you think is true, Ron?
First of all, there's some interesting oddities about this fight. First of all, the line movement. Rick Glenn started out at plus 125. Someone bet big and pushed him into pretty deep minus territory. And then someone bet big on Aguilar to push him back up into the plus territory.
I want to meet that
And
guy.
second of all,
That guy who bet on Aguilar. What kind of drugs is he doing?
that's
Go
hilarious.
ahead, finish.
But and also this fight was originally Arnold Allen versus Gilbert Melendez, and then Melendez fell out, and then Glenn filled in, and then Allen fell out, and then Aguilar filled in. So this fight wasn't actually even meant to be on the card, and the short notice kind of gives me pause for both guys. I think Rick Glenn is one of those really underrated sort of archetypes. He's a real grinder. I thought he won the Bermudez fight. Bermudez has run into some bad luck with split decisions. I thought he won the Feely fight, but I didn't think he won the Glenn fight. And Glenn actually has one of the most impressive performances in years at, I believe, UFC 215 against Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker, who just got beat the fuck up for 3 rounds straight. And Rick Glenn just showed kind of a level difference there. So I think Rick Glenn is the kind of fighter to make this look perhaps like a minus 500, minus 600 fight if it goes his way. I don't think Aguilar is particularly great. I don't think he's straight up bad, but I don't think he's great, and I think the value is squarely on Rick Glenn here.
Nice. Did you get any action on him on plus money?
Yeah, plus 120. I put in 1 unit. I don't generally bet big, unit-wise, but at plus money, Rick Glenn was kind of a really, really easy bet to make.
Yeah, I wouldn't get caught up on units, unit size. I mean, I'm so much more consistent when I'm betting the same 1 unit instead of varying and saying I'm gonna do 1.5 here, 0.5 here, 2 here. I don't know. It's too much to think about. If you just do a standard size, it's way better in my opinion. But
yeah, I generally just do half units on throwaway props. And I went really big on David Branch at UFC 230, and then he ended up killing me. So I just started to go 2, and I went 5 on Dariush, but past that I've just gone 1 and 2.
Nice. Yeah, I hit Cannonier live in that one. Again, I know his name's Cannonier, but it sounds cool if you say it British. Cannonier. One of my friends from the Switch Kick podcast started saying Cannonier, and I'm going with it. So, moving along to the next fight on this card, we have Antonia, I guess? Antonina? I don't know how to say her first name. Antonina Shevchenko, who is 6-0, taking on Ji-Yeon Kim, who is 8-1-2. The betting line for this one opened up, and Shevchenko opened up minus 385. Ji-Yeon Kim at plus 265. First fight where I think the line margin, second fight where the line margins have tightened up a little bit, where Antonia Shevchenko is minus 310 and Ji-Yeon Kim is plus 255. So people betting on Kim a little bit in this one. I don't knock it, although because Shevchenko is primarily a striker. She doesn't have much MMA experience. She might be being brought in on, nepotism because her sister is fighting for the UFC belt. And, Ji-Yeon Kim has been in there before. She's, had some UFC wins. She didn't look good in them. She did not look good in them. But, that's still a big factor. She can, she has the ability to possibly grind out a decision like she did against Justine Kish a little while ago. But, I don't know. Picking this one, I think that Shevchenko will probably butcher her on the feet. I don't think Kim really has the grappling to make this one ugly and gain top control and win rounds. I really don't think that's even in her repertoire. So I'm going to pick Shevchenko. I think she might finish her, honestly. I think if her Muay Thai gets going, I really don't see how Kim's going to stand in there for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm on fight doesn't go the distance for this one, but I favor Shevchenko fairly heavily. Shevchenko's performance on Dana White's Contender Series was actually very, very, very impressive, enough to actually justify this line. This isn't just the sort of raw hype that guys like Tay Edwards had. It was a very, very systematic dismantling. She punched off kicks. She looked very, very long. She looked very, very good takedown defense wise, and her clinch game was probably the best I've seen in the flyweight division so far. I mean, Valentina Shevchenko has a legitimately good clinch game, but she doesn't hunt the clinch like the elder Shevchenko does. I think it's one of the most unique game plans when it comes to women's MMA, and Shevchenko definitely has the frame for it. She's very tall, and when Jamie Navarro tried to shoot out the Thai clinch, Shevchenko just totally overpowered her. Shevchenko looked a lot better from the outside and just hunted that double collar tie and kicked the crap out of her. I don't rate Ji-Yeon Kim very highly at all. She's won 2 splits in a row, and on the tape I've seen of her, she has a decent right hand, I suppose, but like she's a low level women's flyweight, and I don't really think that she stands much of a chance against Antonina Shevchenko. The pricing isn't good for Shevchenko, but I guess Shevchenko ITD is at plus 435, so that's worth a stab.
Yep, I just bet on that as we were talking. Yeah, man, Ji-Yeon Kim. Did you actually watch some of her fights like this past week? Like you sat down and watched the whole 15 minutes?
Not 15 minutes.
You killed yourself halfway through, right?
Record. I looked up her record, and then I realized that these aren't fights that I really want to watch. So I went on to, like, you know how Sherdog kind of compiled the Twitter highlights? I saw the Twitter highlights, and then I saw like some parts of her fight where it wasn't purely highlights. Even her highlights weren't particularly impressive, and they were against who was it? Justine Kish and someone else. So I don't really see much to say that this isn't anything but a fairly obvious debut fight for one of the more promising flyweights in the UFC. This isn't nepotism. This is a very, very real contender, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Even though 6 fights. It says she's from South Korea, but that's definitely not right. They definitely have these flipped on Tapology as I'm looking. Lord have mercy on you if you actually would have watched one of Ji-Yeon Kim's fights for tape. I mean, just whew. That's enough for this fight. It's gone too long already. Sorry, Ji-Yeon Kim. I know you're listening. We have on the middleweight division Edmund Shabazian. Man. You have any idea how to pronounce that?
I just say Shabazian. Shabazian.
Oh, damn, you got it down. Shabazian. I should have let you take the lead with this one. It's taking on Darren Stewart, who is 9-3. Shabazian is 7-0, making his UFC debut in this one. Darren Stewart has had a few UFC fights of his own. Checking out the betting line for this one. Opened up at Darren Stewart minus 110, Edmund at minus 130 as a slight favorite. Pretty shocked by this line. It's tightened up even a little more. Still around a pick'em fight, minus 105, minus 115. I got a little action in on Darren Stewart at plus money. I really can't help myself. I thought that. Who was it? Charles Bird that he fought last? I thought Bird was going to expose him.
Yeah, Charles Bird.
But man, he ate all of Bird's shots. He was still standing after Bird blew his load, and he showed his experience, and he knocked him the fuck out in the second round. So Man, he did the same thing with Spicely. Let him absorb all that punishment and knocked him out in the second round. You know what I think's going to happen? I think Edmund is going to come out looking good, 10-9 in the first round. Stewart's going to knock him out in the second and third. Edmund is still a little bit raw. I mean, his striking looks good, but 7 fights. His competition just absolutely brutal. His fight before he got on the Contender Series, he beat a guy who was 17-38. And then 0-0, 1-4, 0-1, 0-0, 3-2. There's no. I don't understand how this guy got a contract, honestly. But there's a couple guys like that on these cards. There always is. But who knows? They can shock us sometimes. Sometimes they look super improved in between fights. But man, I think that Darren Stewart is an excellent brawler. I think he's gonna drag this guy into the deep and murky waters. And Darren Stewart's gonna be the pick to get this one done.
Yeah, I actually legitimately like Darren Stewart. He's kind of in a never-ending hell of facing Dana White Contender Series guys. Like 4 of his last 5 or something crazy like that has been Contender Series guys. He faced Julian Marquez, he faced Carl Robertson, he faced Bird, and now he's facing Shabazian. So he's kind of turned into the gatekeeper in that sense for middleweight, but he's looked very good in 3 of those contests. The loss against Marquez was a very, very good fight. And Spicely, okay, he didn't look great against Bird, but the fact that he was able to steal that win with that nice elbow out of the clinch was something that really told me that Stewart is a little bit craftier than I expected. I mean, he obviously has big power in his hands. He's explosive. He has a surprising amount of athleticism for a mid-level middleweight. He has a lot of things that make you think that he can beat a guy like Edmund Shabazian, who just came in and traded with his opponent. What's his name? Jones. He came in and traded with Jones just frantically for the first 40 seconds until Jones went down. I don't think Shabazian has the head movement, despite being a pupil of the great Edmund, to actually beat a guy like Stewart in the trade. I simply don't. Stewart has a chin. Stewart can keep a pace. Stewart is probably craftier and probably a fair bit more powerful. Unless Shabazian shows some legitimate skills here, I don't think that what he showed on the Contender Series will be close to enough.
Are you implying that GFC fighters do not have good head movement?
No, he obviously has good head movement, just in the wrong ways.
Oh, no.
His head moves from upright to the floor.
Yeah, I was making a joke about it, Rhonda, if you didn't pick up on the /S.
Yeah, I did. I did.
So, moving along to the bantamweight division, we have Pedro Munoz, who is 16-3, taking on Brian Caraway, who is 21-8. And we have, for the betting line at this one, Pedro Munoz opened up minus 275. Brian Caraway opened plus 195. Best Fight Odds has this line flipped. Man, these guys constantly have wrong lines on their website. It's kind of upsetting. It has Munoz opening up as 2-1 underdog, which is not true. Munoz, I think he's going to get this one done. He's, a good point fighting, MMA fighter, I guess. I don't know. He doesn't really get it up for me, honestly. I don't think he's really that good, but Brian Caraway stinks. He's way past his prime, and I wouldn't bet on either of these guys, honestly. I think this fight is just it just doesn't excite me at all. I don't know how you feel about it.
I actually legitimately like Pedro Munoz as a fighter. He's a little bit he's kind of like Ricardo Lamas in the sense that if he doesn't get a finish, he doesn't look good at all. Most of his skills are geared towards getting a finish, and last time he sort of threw away a couple of easy KO opportunities to jump that guillotine. But I mean, he looked like a legitimately good kicker against Brett Johns, rather. He has an idea of what he wants to do on the feet, and Caraway just kind of looked like a very, very slow version of Dominic Cruz on the feet, in the sense that not his footwork, but just his strikes, just long, looping, not coming from like unexpected angles like Cruz's does, but just very, very sad. So I don't think Caraway really has the skill set to challenge Pedro Munoz that much. And I think Munoz should pick this one up fairly handily, probably by guillotine. I think the grappling exchanges in this one are going to be really fun because Caraway looked like a legitimately good grappler against what's his name, Cody Stamann. He looked like a great grappler against Cody Stamann. Just floating through positions and through submissions. But I think Pedro Munoz can hang where Caraway can thrive, and I don't think the opposite is true.
Yeah, Pedro Munoz has one of the best guillotines in MMA for sure. He's one of the only guys who jumps guillotine and actually has a chance at finishing it. It's incredible how many people try that move and have absolutely zero shot of getting it and just end up on their backs and lose position. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to the heavyweight finale fight in the heavyweight division. We have Justin Frazier, who is 10-2, taking on Juan Espino, who is 8-1. For the betting line opening up for this one, we have Juan Espino as the plus 130 underdog, Justin Frazier at minus 170. Now, since then the line has flipped. Juan Espino is now minus 155. Justin Frazier is plus 135. So I did not actually really study these guys too much. From what I've heard, people are saying that Espino, I think, trains at ATT. He's got good boxing, and I don't know. People are saying that Frazier's just a fat guy who's not very impressive. I don't know if you have any opinion on this one or you studied it much, but this is the one fight I don't think I really have a clue about.
Yeah, I mean it's heavyweight. Bet on the underdog. That's what you do with heavyweight because heavyweight's really really bad at this point. And the Ultimate Fighter has. I don't think it's really declined in the sense that you can't really control what sort of talent comes out of it. But the two divisions they picked for this one, absolutely horrid. Like if you're gonna pick heavyweight and women's featherweight, you need to do them in two separate seasons where they're at least carried by an actually deep division. This time they just put two of the worst divisions, probably the two worst divisions in the UFC with the least amount of talent, smashed them together into one season and relied on the personality of a mild-mannered Australian and a Mexican who misses weight all the time to carry the show. So I don't really think that this whole thing this kind of turned into the Ultimate Fighter rant, and I guess I'm fine with that because the Ultimate Fighter is something that I will rail against to my dying days. But I don't really care about this fight at all.
Yeah, when I was saying that bit about the who trains the ATT, honestly, I have no idea which one they're talking about. So I guess I was just talking out of my ass on that one. But beside the point, we got a hell of a main event on docket. In the welterweight division, we have Rafael dos Anjos, who is 28-10, taking on Kamaru Usman, who is 13-1. The betting line for this one opened up at Rafael dos Anjos plus 165, Kamaru Usman at minus 215. People are somehow betting down Kamaru Usman down to minus 265. Rafael dos Anjos is up to plus 225. And even though Sriram was on the program a couple weeks ago, I decided to bring him back for this very specific reason. The man is the biggest Rafael dos Anjos fan I not know, but one of the biggest, probably in the world, biggest Rafael dos Anjos fan. So I'll let you give us your take on this fight.
I mean, I don't know how you can't be an RDA fan. I mean, if you're not an RDA fan, you're biased against good fighting. I think that's all there is to it. Dos Anjos, he used to be very middling. He got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens, of all people, and he turned into one of in my opinion, he's a top 10 fighter of all time. I don't think there's any question. I'd put him ahead of Anderson Silva, and that's not just me being biased. That's him going through a legitimately good. That's him going through a legitimately good division while Silva was busy outstriking Forrest Griffin. So Rafael dos Anjos is at plus 225 here, and I'm going to be honest, I'd take Rafael dos Anjos at plus 225 against any lightweight, welterweight on the planet, literally any one of them. It wouldn't matter one bit because Dos Anjos, he's one of the most taxing people to fight on the planet. I think that's really become his biggest skill set in the last few years when he made his title run. Rafael dos Anjos, he isn't an easy man to fight even when you're beating him. Khabib Nurmagomedov was able to take down and control Rafael dos Anjos, but he did not have an easy time of it. Colby Covington tried to take down and control Rafael dos Anjos, ate every big shot of the fight, got shit on in the clinch, got shit on at distance, and won because the judges don't know what they're looking at. and Rafael dos Anjos lost to Tony Ferguson, who puts a hell of a pace on you. So it's very, very impressive to beat Rafael dos Anjos via controlling him. It's very, very impressive to beat Rafael dos Anjos over the distance. And I don't think Kamaru Usman has what it takes. Even at evens, I would take Rafael dos Anjos here because Kamaru Usman, he's been impressive, but not really to the extent, like his fights are very low pace. He didn't really take advantage of Maya being as bad on the feet as I expected him to, being a powerful guy who can swing bombs like he did against another jiu-jitsu ace in Sergio Moraes. So I think this fight's going to be one of those where you have to be really patient to see how it plays out because, especially a welterweight, Dos Anjos is an attrition artist. And Usman is going to, try to stall in the clinch as much as he can, having seen the judges give Colby Covington all the credit in the world for eating clinch shots, but still staying the one not against the fence. But I don't think Usman can keep the pace up like Colby Covington did. I'm guessing round 5, Dos Anjos, KO, and he beats up Tyron Woodley without any trouble at all in his next fight.
Interesting. Some good points. Some I would disagree with. A couple questions. Did you start betting when Dos Anjos fought Covington?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't bet on that fight because I figured, and that's actually one thing for this one. I might just hit Dos Anjos decision or Dos Anjos inside the distance because we all know if Usman is making it to decision, it's going to be on a good deal of clinch holding. And if Usman gets a good deal of clinch holding, it's going to be Usman the winner, regardless of how much damage he takes.
Even though you disagree with that.
I mean, yeah, you have to. If you've read the judging criteria, you have to disagree with that. But that's simply how the judges operate. They're, buffoons.
You don't think they score by the criteria, you mean?
They don't. They objectively do not. There are a couple exceptions. There's Figueiredo Brooks. There's Dvalishvili Signs. There's Batelio Pearl Gonzalez. But past a couple of exceptions, they unequivocally do not score by the criteria.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of factors because there's different rule sets. There's not a unified rules. There's different commissions. There's different people instructing these people. They have different, and obviously the biggest factor of all is that scoring rounds is objective. Boxing is a prime example. There are a lot of rounds that probably go back and forth just based on the judge's preference of whether they like big punches or they like output or they like jabs or they like hooks or whatnot. But it's super super complicating. It's a never ending decision or a never ending discussion. Honestly, a couple of points. Sergio Moraes, when Kamaru Usman knocked out Sergio Moraes, that was one of the biggest flukes in the UFC. The dude's got seven or eight decisions in the UFC, and that one knockout. Man, he got so lucky with that. But regardless, that was a nice punch. And then in terms
Yeah,
of
Usman just doesn't give a shit about finishing.
yeah, he's so boring. Oh yeah, I remember to tell you about this Usman story. So I went to the UFC Brooklyn and I went to the press conference the day before, and they had the main event for the next 10 cards. I think Usman was supposed to fight Ponzinibbio, but I think that fight ended up getting canceled and Maya replaced him. But I remember when somebody asked Kamaru Usman a question. I screamed out as loud as I could, 30%, and I don't think anybody heard me or understood the joke. But of course,
I mean,
go ahead.
it's Kamaru Usman. He just irks me. His style irks me. I can appreciate good wrestling, but when it's totally control oriented, you kind of have to question how confident he is in his own wrestling. If that makes sense, in the sense that if all your energy is going to be expended on doing exactly zero damage and doing exactly nothing that scores, if your opponent cracks you with one thing, then you really do depend on the judges not knowing what they're looking at. And that's the sort of fighter that I dislike seeing. So he beat Emil Meek fairly decisively. He's won most of his fights fairly decisively. I expect that if he wins this one, it won't be as decisive because Dos Anjos is just the kind of fighter that even if he loses this one, by the judges' say, even if he loses this one, it's likely to be that he deals more damage just because Usman is just so wooden on the feet. He's not very good at all, in my opinion, as a striker. And the best way Usman wins is if Dos Anjos is just absolutely athletically overwhelmed, but I don't think that's a very high likelihood either.
Yeah, the only way that I think Dos Anjos loses is if Usman decides to ramp up his output and his pace and his cardio, and replicate the same game plan that Khabib and Covington implemented. I don't think that some of the stuff you said about Rafael dos Anjos is entirely accurate, especially him being a top 10 fighter of all time. I wouldn't even say top 50, but he's good. I like the dude a lot.
Oh, who'd you put? How could you put 50 people ahead of Rafael dos Anjos?
I could just think of a lot, just a lot. Maybe 30, maybe 30.
Right.
I'll give him a little.
Shoot.
Who? All 29 of
I
them I have to
mean,
name.
go for someone. Go for some. Like, who do you think is better than Rafael dos Anjos that
I
is not
think I th- I th-
Aldo, Jones, GSP?
I think Matt Hughes was better than Rafael. I mean, the dude is very well rounded. I like him a lot. Like his, but I don't know. I definitely think that he lost the Colby Covington fight. We talked about this for eons. I scored
That is objectively incorrect.
objectively, yes, yes. But he did. The fight was closer than I seen the first time. I remember the first time I was sure that Covington won the decision, maybe 49-46. Thought it was a little closer than that. I ended up scoring at 49-47 after all things said and done. But he just looked. He didn't look. The big thing about judging fights is just composure, and he looked like he was like fighting off the loss the entire fight. From after the first takedown, he looked pretty overwhelmed. He was against the cage the entire time. He didn't really have good posture. He wasn't throwing a lot of like well balanced strikes. It was just clinch strikes from here and there when he could. And I think that Covington, hung in there in the kickboxing exchanges too a lot better than we thought that we would. We thought that Dos Anjos would dish out a lot more punishment, but man, after Covington was using all the gas in Dos Anjos' arms, stuffing takedowns for the first couple rounds, then those latter rounds were a lot closer in the kickboxing than we expected. So I honestly think that that's a huge factor here. I like to think that Dos Anjos will get that late round knockout, 3-4-5. But man, if Usman hangs on him just like he does in all of his fights, man, it's gonna be tough for Dos Anjos to have that gas left in the tank to score that knockout late. So honestly, I like to think that if Dos Anjos gets a knockout, he hopefully sparks him in one. But that's just too ideal. It's just too perfect for Usman to go out that way. But
I
it's a
mean,
great fight.
yeah, the way I see it is, I mean, first of all, I disagree with quite a few things you said about Dos Anjos Covington, mostly that Covington was even close in the kickboxing just because Dos Anjos landed a lot better more often and wasn't at a big volume disadvantage. And, again, shit on him in the clinch. But I think Usman, he's not going to lose a decision. Usman is not the kind of fighter that loses a decision to the kind of fighter that Rafael Dos Anjos is. And Dos Anjos isn't going to gas, in my opinion. He went 5 rounds against Tony Ferguson at altitude with his eyes scooped out by Tony Ferguson's finger, and he wasn't gassed at the end of that fight. He was just out pressured because Tony Ferguson has the most manic pace in the history of the UFC, perhaps, except for maybe Justin Gaethje. But Kamaru Usman, he's very, very low pace. I don't trust his pace, or I don't trust his cardio enough when he's done the least that he possibly can in his fights. So Rafael Dos Anjos, I feel like is just going to drown him in volume rounds 4 and 5 and eventually get the finish. And if he doesn't, I feel like he's pretty boned because Kamaru Usman is not going to lose a decision to clinch striking. Just like Colby Covington turned out to not have the style that was going to lose to clinch striking. Kamaru Usman's going to come forward, he's going to clinch up, he's going to win those rounds. And if Dos Anjos doesn't get the finish, he's not winning this fight. So I think it's kind of a test for Dos Anjos. It's asymmetrical, really, when it comes to the style matchup.
We actually have the Tapology rankings for the best fighters of all time. Let's see. What's your official guess for where Dos Anjos is?
Very low. I know one of my guys said that Gegard Mousasi was above
Was him.
Rafael dos Anjos,
I
Gegard
agree. I
Mousasi,
agree.
and a couple of other guys.
Gegard's really good. Oh, that's fucking hilarious. Rafael dos Anjos is number 49 and Musasi is 50.
Oh my
Some
god.
of these are a little
Yeah, equal
objective.
with Mousasi.
Mark Coleman, I disagree.
Dude,
Rashad
fucking
Evans,
Rashad.
Rashad Evans, I disagree. Josh Barnett, I disagree. Rich Franklin, I disagree.
Dos
Um,
Santos, a guy who, a Lawler who Dos Anjos beat. Rampage Jack. How do you score Rampage Jackson, a light heavyweight who is just technically not nearly as good,
yeah,
to
this list
the
isn't a
man who
pound for
ran
pound.
through like that?
This is not like a pound for pound list. This is like
Fucking,
like who contributed most to the sport list or something like that.
fucking Nick Diaz and
Tito Ortiz.
Cain Velasquez, who's fought what, like on average in
Yeah,
his career, like
this list
once
is
a
a little
year
fucked.
because his frail
Nick
alien bones
Diaz
can't handle the weight of his muscles.
Nick Diaz being number 38 is
This
so gracious. It's so gracious. Um,
Nate Diaz above the guy that kicked the shit out of his leg. Dos
Nate's on
Anjos
the
is
list
just,
too.
I think.
I don't.
Wait, no.
I didn't see
It's
any
just
Nick.
Nick. Never mind. I just misread that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
Nick
just
is the
went
better
through
fighter.
Nick again.
All
Yeah,
right,
Nick is greater than Nate, but
we're
Nate is probably better than
we're
Nick.
dwelling on this a little too long. I don't think we'll ever agree. We could probably do a whole podcast just on the Covington versus Dos Anjos fight. One thing last point I want to say is that I can tell that your fandom is still huge for Dos Anjos. Hey, I was the biggest Jose Aldo fan in the world until about a year ago. And ever since then, I still love the guy a lot, but betting has brought out the honesty in me, thinking that not every fighters just aren't as good as you're never gonna realize the real capabilities of a fighter if like you claim that they're your favorite and stuff like that. I never saw the weaknesses in Conor or Aldo or anybody who I really liked until they were finally exposed. So.
Aldo is the greatest fighter of all time, number one.
I would like
Just,
to
just throwing
agree,
that
but I
out
would
there.
put 4 or 5 or 6 guys ahead of him. Fedor ahead of him, Jones ahead of him, Silva ahead of him,
Silva.
GSP ahead of him.
I think Silva is supremely questionable in that list. To be honest,
16 wins in a row.
What's that?
16 wins in a row.
Against no one nearly as good as tier 2 of Aldo's defenses.
Yeah, Aldo's defenses were good, but man, I don't think, I don't know. I don't
think Silva beat anyone half as good as Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, let's see. Fucking juiced up Chael, that was pretty hard. He beat Maya really easily, as boring as it was. Liebman and Franklin were killers at the time. Irvin was a guy in a bigger weight class. He had his fair share of tough tests, but you're right. He did, in terms of Mendez and Edgar and Lamas and all that. Those wins are very, very spectacular.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's an argument for GSP above him. I think there's an outside argument for Bones above him. But I don't really think that the argument's as convincing as Aldo above either of those two.
I think Jones is number one, no question. Even though I strongly dislike the dude. He's a lying, pathological piece of shit. But he's the best fucking fighter that's ever graced the earth.
Yeah, you kind of have to, acknowledge both of that. John Jones is probably the most naturally talented and most intelligent fighter in the history of mixed martial arts, at least as far as we've seen him. But, he's self-destructive enough that none of that's going to matter when people look back on his career. And I honestly think that Jones he's probably more adaptable than Aldo in the sense that he can, fight around even bad style matchups like Gustafsson. But I also don't think that Jones's best opponents were better than Aldo's best opponents just as a function of him being at light heavyweight. And I think the same thing about Fedor. I don't think Jones or Fedor faced anyone like Aldo faced.
I think so. Right now, I think that the three best opponents that Aldo faced were, or the beat, let's say, the three best opponents that he beat were Mendez, Edgar, and I guess Lamas, maybe Uriah Faber.
Prime Faber was a
Florian-
monster.
Florian,
there was
maybe?
Lamas. There was
But
Hominick is underrated.
Jones beaten 5 champs in a row. You know, a little bit past Prime Shogun. You know, and the way he finished them too, man. Like it's just so versatile. You know, who would have think that he would have, you know, tapped out, you know, 2 Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts. You know, he made Shogun tap to strikes. He, you know, ran through Chael easily. Had one of the greatest fights ever with Gustafsson, and then of course beat Daniel Cormier, one of the greatest of all time, twice.
I mean, I think one of the things that's a little bit disingenuous about the whole 5 champs in a row is that there's never been another champ other than Jose Aldo before Conor McGregor knocked him out. There just hadn't been. Jose Aldo came into WEC, ruled WEC, kicked the crap out of Uriah Faber, went to the UFC, was the inaugural champion, kicked the crap out of everyone, and then lost to Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I
he never had a chance to beat 5 champs in a row. If Aldo didn't exist, Edgar and Mendez would be the greatest fighters of all time.
Well, he had the chance to beat 5 in a row, right? He had Hominick, then Florian, then Edgar, then Mendez, then Edgar, then Jung, and then Mendez. That's 6. I know what you mean. With there was no other champions though. He's the only champ. I get that. But like I said, all those were great points. I fell in love with the dude from that, you know, WEC to UFC run. But you just can't forget about the fact that he was mentally beaten in the biggest fight of his life. And the first time someone ever talked some shit to him, the first time somebody ever rattled his cage, he went out there and laid an egg in the biggest fight of all time. I mean, all things considered, that fight catapulted McGregor. It was back to back with Ronda, and that just 2 of the most shocking knockouts ever. It took a lot out of him. A lot out of his.
A little bit. Like, basically every great loses, and you kind of have to think about Aldo had been fighting for 10 years when he faced Chad Mendes the second time. He was a decade into his career. And before that fight, Aldo had been legitimately untouchable. As in, his prospect loss to Luciano Azevedo. That aside, and a lot of greats have that aside, for 6 years through the WEC and through the UFC, the man hadn't been touched. He hadn't been challenged once. A decade into his professional career, he faced Chad Mendes the second time. A reinvented Chad Mendes gave him the fight of his life and still lost 46-49. And then he lost to Conor McGregor. So I think it's a little bit odd to frame it as Conor McGregor just being the first to rattle him. I think it's a little fairer to say that Aldo, despite being young, has declined a little bit physically. And you can see that in other sports where, like Muay Thai, for example, where people become shot really, really young because they start very, very young. And Aldo started at something like 17 or 18, and he is pretty out of his prime at 30. So I think saying that he lost is a little bit disingenuous when he has beaten better guys than anyone else in the history of fighting.
Yeah, I mean it's a very, very close race. I think Fedor, Jones, and Aldo. I don't know. All 5 of them, man, are so close. I don't like to rank them, but I like to say Aldo, Fedor, Silva, GSP, and Jones are the 5 best ever. It's too hard to rank them. We'll never settle over it. But we've been dwelling on this a little too much. We gotta move along to the card going down in Adelaide, South Australia, this Saturday, December 1st at 10 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. We're gonna start things off in the lightweight division. We have Damir Ismagulov taking on Alex Gorgees. Ismagulov is 16-2. Gorgees is 7-0. The betting line for this one opened up at Damir Ismagulov as the favorite at -405. Gorgees at +285. The line has remained around similar. People betting down Damir all the way down to -490. Gorgees up to +390. I kind of agree with the line movement in this one. I mean, he's Demir seems almost like a lock in this one. Gorgis looks so raw. He, some of his fights in leading up to this fight are just absolutely incredible. That this guy got signed. So sloppy, his opponent, just terrible opponents. I think that Damir is, very, very well rounded. He's got good wrestling. He's got good submissions, good top control, and also some power on the feet. So unless USADA gets to him, which is honestly a very, very common trend. We saw Alexei Konchenko come in looking like a world beater on tape, and then he came in his last fight looking a little flat. Like I said, the same thing happened with Plovich. It's there's no secret Russians are the most prevalent steroid users in the world. So. You gotta, I mean, he's Kazakhstani, but come on, that's a USSR thing. So hopefully Damir Ismagulov looks the same, and hopefully he gets the win done in this one.
This isn't one that I've seen a lot of tape on just because, and this is easy to forget. It started out as Ross Pearson versus Joe Duffy, and his injuries have, slaughtered this one. But I think the line is fair from the little I've seen of Ismagulov. He's very good, and I haven't seen that much from Gorgies. I generally, you can, if in doubt, you can bet on the guy whose name ends with OV because they're hard bastards. So I think the line's probably fair, but still zero value. Just a good debut fight for Ismagulov, I suppose.
Hell yeah. Next fight, man. Let me tell you something. The tough card is way better than this one. Some of these fights are going to be a bitch to sit through, and this next one is one of them. Kita Nakamura, who is 33-9-2, taking on Salim Tuhari, who is 10-2. The betting line for this one opened up as Kita Nakamura as the favorite at -195, Tuhari at +155. Barely any line movement, +1 or -185 for Nakamura, +160 for Tuhari. Not surprised, honestly. I don't understand anybody who bets on this fight. There's just nothing to gain. Both of these dudes are very, very average. Just gotta say that. Kita Nakamura lost his last fight to Tony Martin. He has a win over Alex Morona, which doesn't look bad. Also a win over Li Jingling, which looks pretty good. But man, that was a couple years ago. He's looked, much slower. He's 34, getting up there in age. He's had over 40 fights. So I think that Father Time is catching up to him. But he still has a winnable fight here. Salim Tuhari is just so underwhelming. His fight against Warley Alves, I've never seen a guy go into a UFC fight with as little tenacity and a little aggressiveness and a little will to win as this guy did against Warley Alves. It's just, he was in the entire fight. Like, Warley Alves wasn't beating his ass or anything. The dude just showed, like, nothing. Just nothing. So, that fight was one of the most painful fights I've ever had to sit through and watch. So I'm really, really not looking forward to this one. But I guess Kita Nakamura is going to get it done because I don't think Tuhari is capable of winning a fight. So have you studied these two jackasses, Srimo?
I saw the Nakamura sub over Jing Liang. That feels like a little bit of an anomaly. A loss to Martin actually isn't that bad considering how good Martin looked as a striker against Ryan LaFleur last time out. But no, bottom line, I don't give a shit about this fight. It's bad. It's really bad. I'm honestly more interested in pretty much all of the TUF finale fights than this fight. I'm probably going to skip it when I watch. I'm definitely going to avoid it as a bad.
Yeah, I'll go grab a coffee or something during this fight. But next fight we have Kai Kara France, who is 17-7, taking on Elias Garcia, who is 6-1. The betting line for this one opened up. Kai Kara France opened up at -365. Elias Garcia at +255. People are betting down France all the way down to -400. Garcia shot up to +325. I think this is a little wide now. I don't think that Garcia has a good chance of winning this fight. but I wouldn't really cap it this high. But I guess people are trusting Kai Kara. Coming in here looking pretty good. Got really good takedown defense. I was honestly really, really impressed with this takedown defense against this fight against Alexandre Pantoja, who is just a tremendous fighter, as we all know, who's just really shined in the UFC lately. So the rest of his competition, not so great. The dude's from Australia, I believe, or New Zealand. Yeah, excuse me, New Zealand. So unfortunately, the competition of MMA just isn't too high out there. He trains out of Tiger Muay Thai though, which is a great camp. A lot of those guys are fighting Tyson Pedro, Tai Tuivasa. And I'm sure they have a lot of other UFC guys fighting out of that camp too. It's a really good camp. So that actually, holds a little bit of value. I think that'll play a big factor in this one. Don't really have a great feel for Kara's striking. I don't think it's that great. I think he's got a little bit of striking, a little bit of submissions, but man, he's just not good enough to be minus 400. That's the only thing. Garcia is looked pretty average in his debut against Mark De La Rosa. His striking didn't look too impressive, and then was taken down. His takedown defense didn't look too bad, but eventually Mark De La Rosa did get him down and did finish him with a choke in that one. So the value in this one is going to be on Elias Garcia, but I expect Kai Kara France to win in his debut.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. Again, I don't generally cap fights this wide because fights are very volatile, but that decreases the lower down in weight you go. And I believe this is either at flyweight or at bantamweight. I'm not sure which one, considering that flyweight is, it's been gutted and it's going to be gutted. And I think Kai Kara France, a big part of his appeal is just the fact that he has legit power for a 125 or 135 or Elias Garcia got kind of run through by Mark De La Rosa, and I don't rate De La Rosa particularly highly. So it's a fight that I'm struggling to feel strongly about. I don't feel too strongly negatively about it as I did about Nakamura Tuari, but it's a fight where I'm probably going to avoid it on the odds alone. I probably would have put a little bit on Kai Kara France, even if he was like minus 200, but minus 400, I don't feel as certain in a debutant with fairly low-level competition beating a decent guy. Not a great guy, but Garcia isn't bad.
Nice word of the use, debutante. And in the next fight, we have, in the lightweight division, another stinker of a fight. Mitsuto Hirota, who is 18-9-2, taking on Christos Giagos, who is 15-7. The betting line for this one opened up Giagos as the favorite, minus 365. Hirota at plus 255. The line is almost exactly the same. Hirota is down to plus 305 now, while Giagos is still at minus 365. Interesting line movement on that one. But, it's neither of these guys are honestly UFC caliber at this point. Giagos was brought in on short notice for his last fight against Charles Oliveira. He lost by submission in that one. And then I guess they're just keeping him around out of courtesy for one more fight. They're like, hey, dude, you want another fight? Sure, I do. All right, go fly 20 hours to Australia. Okay, thanks UFC. Hirota also, losing his last two fights. Ross Pearson, that fight was brutal. I honestly thought he won that fight, but Ross Pearson is no good, so that win doesn't hold. That fight doesn't hold much water, and he got smashed by Alexander Volkanovski before that, which is a very, very legitimate contender. So no shame in that loss, but. Hirota plus 305. Honestly, I don't diss it. Giago should just not be minus 300 versus anybody. So, pretty poor fight. But what are you thinking about this one?
I looked at Giagos' record before this, and he actually has 2 wins in ACB, Absolute Championship Berkut, which I actually rate pretty highly, just because he hasn't faced anyone particularly good. Neither one of them have Wikipedia pages, but ACB is kind of a tough environment, so you have to kind of respect that. And I agree with you that he shouldn't be plus or minus 300 or anywhere near that territory against anyone. But I do think he wins this fight just because Mizuto Hirota lost to Ross Pearson. Hirota's resilient for sure. He made it to decision against Alexander Volkanovski, who has made a habit of just drowning guys in volume. But I don't think that he's good enough to beat Yagos, and Yagos didn't actually make a particularly bad account of himself against Charles Oliveira. It wasn't a great fight. It wasn't, excellent showing in a loss, but it wasn't a bad showing, especially considering that he got out from underneath Oliveira and mount. That's something that you can, frame and put on your wall. So I favor Yagos, but minus 365 is excessive. If you know something about Hirota being, better than I'm portraying him, then it's worth a stab for sure. But this one screams avoid. A lot of these scream avoid.
For sure, like I said, this card is going to be a little bit rough, but we'll hope to stick through there. We have next fight in the flyweight division, Wilson Hayes, who is 22-9, taking on Ben Nguyen, who is 17-7. Ben Nguyen opened up at plus 110 for this one. Wilson Hayes at minus 150. Since then, the line has flipped almost identically. Ben Nguyen at minus 150 and Wilson Hayes at plus 130. What are you thinking about this one, Sriram?
I actually legitimately like Wilson Hayes, like as a fighter. I think he's underrated in the sense that he faced both flyweight champions back to back when he wasn't ready for it. So, public opinions kind of rebounded to him being a, total bum of flyweight. But I think he's legitimately good. He's excellent, in my opinion. He's a good, like, excellent in the sense that I can appreciate his skill set. He's not elite, even among flyweight, but he's a very fun to watch. He's a great grappler. He isn't a great striker, and I think his best shot is winning this inside the distance. Because Ben Wen is he's a more patient striker. He's a little bit more nuanced, and Wilson Hayes brings big power, especially in kicks. The Jorgensen finish was one of my favorites, like in an underrated sense, just because he kicked Jorgensen's liver out of his torso and then took him down and got the arm triangle. So Wilson Hayes is an opportunistic finisher, and Ben Wen, he isn't terribly powerful. He is able to be submitted, and Wilson Hayes is one of the better grapplers he's faced. He faced Jussier Formiga and survived with Formiga on top of him, so this might not be a total blowout on the ground. But I think Wilson Hayes kind of needs an inside the distance in this one to win because over the distance, Wen is just a little bit sharper on the feet.
Yeah, it all depends if Wilson Hayes can get his ground game going. He is a really great grappler. And like you said, that is a little detrimental thinking about the fact that Ben Nguyen survived against Jussier Formiga, who's just a very, very talented grappler. Just beat Sergio Pettis would probably have been in the next flyweight contender for the belt, which he definitely deserves. But tough luck. Honestly, I would go with dog or pass on this one. I wouldn't trust Ben Nguyen at minus 150. He just hasn't really looked to like a winner lately. I don't know if that makes sense, but he had a good run in the UFC for a couple fights, but he's been struggling lately, running into some really tough competition. So no discredit to him. He's a cool dude. But I think that this one's gonna be tough to like you said, if this fight stays on the feet, I definitely favor Nguyen, but it's going to be tough to. I don't think his scramble game is that good for being a flyweight. Flyweights, are really, really reliant on scrambles. So I definitely think Wilson Hayes is great in scrambles too. So if that's where this fight ends up, as a close combat wrestling match, I expect. Wilson Hayes to win. If it ends up as a kickboxing match at range, I expect Ben Nguyen to win. Okay.
Yeah, I feel basically the same way. I think Ben Nguyen, his submissions are probably the best part of his game. I don't rate his striking too highly, but he did get a submission over Tim Elliott, who's a grappler. Tim Elliott, he's impressive. He's underrated in the sense that his record doesn't look great, but he's a very legitimate grappler. And Ben Nguyen just was able to take him out in like a minute, less than a minute, something like that. But I think that does put him in a little bit of a bottleneck against Wilson Hayes, who is almost unquestionably the better grappler. Wilson Hayes is a world champion, and he has a win over Ryan Hall in pure grappling. The man is a guard pass named after him. So I don't think that there's really any reason to think that Wen can handle him on the ground. So his best shot is sort of using his it's a skill set that he likes to use as striking, but it's still somewhat of an auxiliary skill set. So I don't know if I can trust his takedown defense against Hayes's. And Hayes looked legitimately crafty against John Moraga despite the loss. So I'm feeling Hayes here, but maybe that's just me being an unreasonable Hayes fan for no reason at all.
Next fight in the welterweight division, we have Alexei Kunchenko, who is undefeated at 19-0, taking on Yushin Okami, who is 35-11. The betting line for this one opened up Alexei Kunchenko at the favorite at -320, Yushin Okami at +240. Since then, people have bet down Alexei Kunchenko a little more to -340, Yushin Okami at +280, but the line has stayed relatively the same. Alexei Kunchenko, like I mentioned, he looked like a world beater on tape a couple months ago. Before that Moscow card, was a -600 or 700 favorite in that fight against Thiago Alves, and honestly, that fight was razor thin. Honestly, I think Alexei Kunchenko would have lost that fight if it weren't in Russia, but that's how those things go. That card actually had a few questionable decisions on it, all going to Russians, but that's beside the point. That's just Russian athletics for you. Yushin Okami, man, surprised me in his last fight against Diego Lima, man. He looked really good in that fight. His takedowns are on point, his cardio was on point, and he beat Lima, easily with the wrestling. So, Kunchenko is I think his striking is his best aspect. He definitely has good ground game as well, but I don't think Okami is going to be able to hang with him on the feet. So I think Okami is going to be going for the wrestling. He's going to be trying to make this fight, a grinding wrestling match. And I honestly don't I actually like his chances at plus 280 or 260 or whatever it is right now. Shit, man, Okami he's still there, and for two older gentlemen, I think Kunchenko, even though he just got in the UFC, I'm pretty sure he's 34. Let me double check this. Yep, 34. So two veteran fighters. I definitely don't discourage a play on Yushin Okami at plus 280.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but beating Diego Lima doesn't really impress me because Diego Lima is very, very bad. And Alexei Kunchenko's close fight against Thiago Alves, I don't even remember how I scored that one. I do remember, I figured that it would go to Kunchenko because it's Russia, and I just sort of figured that there would be that same sort of Brazilian bias. And I think this was after the absolutely abhorrent Kabalov versus Cajun Johnson decision, which pretty much made me think that any Russian who makes it to decision gets their win bonus. But yeah, I think Kunchenko picks this one up, despite looking not as impressive as I sort of expected him to against Thiago Alves. I don't feel strongly about this one, to be very honest with you. I mean, Yushin Okami, he didn't look shot against Diego Lima, but on the other hand, he could have been shot and he could have still beaten Diego Lima in a very similar way. So I don't think Okami can grind out Kunchenko, although he might have a size advantage as a former light heavyweight. But I think Kunchenko has most of the advantages here. The odds are wide, but that's you can take a stab at Okami. I just wouldn't trust him at this point.
Yeah, I was so disappointed by Kunchenko. I watched like 3 or 4 of that dude's fights before the last event and was so high on him, and put him in a parlay with a bunch of other Russians, including Kogulov. So I was obviously glad they won the fight, but I was a little underwhelmed for sure. Next fight is a fight I'm a little more interested in after tape. In the featherweight division, we have Sadiq Youssef, who is 7-1, taking on Suman Mokhtarian, who is 8-0. The betting line for this one opened up at Sadiq Youssef, the favorite, at -385. Suman Mokhtarian at +265. That opener is like spot on. I honestly think it might even be a little too steep there. But some crazy motherfuckers are out there are betting Sadiq Youssef all the way down to -620. A guy making his UFC debut, who looked decent to good in his Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series performance. I guess it has a little bit to go with the opponent he's taken on. Suman Mokhtarian has fought some pretty low-level competition. A lot of the guys don't even have MMA records on Tapology. I don't even know how that works. And then the other guys that do are, very, very bad records. So it seems like he has a pretty padded record. He hasn't really fought anybody good yet for the most part. So that's obviously worrisome. But Sadiq Youssef seems a little one-dimensional. He he's a good puncher, good boxer, decent striking overall. But you watch his fight against Luis Gomez in Titan FC. He's taking on Luis Gomez, who's a tiny, tiny guy. He must have fought at bantamweight. He weighed in at under the featherweight under the featherweight limit, yes. And it doesn't say whether his previous fights were at featherweight or not. But man, this dude was small and he rocked Sadiq Youssef with a punch really bad. Put him down, and then eventually got the finish a few minutes later, and he knocked him out via slam. Like he was going for a takedown, and he basically just went for a double leg and slammed Sadiq Youssef's head into the mat pretty quickly. So that shows a little bit of grappling inexperience for me. And he, like I said, he got taken down a lot by Gomez in that fight. His takedown defense didn't look too good, and that was only less than a year ago. So I think that, and Suman Mkhitaryan has definitely got a good ground game. His striking isn't anything special, but most of his wins are coming by submission. So if he has his wrestling on point, if he's ready to go out there and chase that submission, I think he has a good chance of pulling off the huge upset with this one against Sadiq Youssef. So if I had to pick one, I would just go with Mkhitaryan just for the fuck of it, man. Yeah, plus 500 or wherever he is. I think this is going to be one of the biggest upsets of the year if he can get his submission game going, which I guess I'm going to trust him enough to do. So the pick's going to be Mkhitaryan here.
This is another one on this card I don't feel too strongly about just because they're both debutants. And I learned from from a lot of fights not to trust them as much as I should, or as much as I used to, just because it's hard to know what to make of them against higher level competition. And I think Suman Mkhitaryan is poised to become a great example of that. Because if you look at his last two wins come via baseball bat choke and a twister. So I don't think that makes me think that his submission game is just a random meme shit against fighters that just can't grapple at all, and he'll just take whatever he wants from them. And I'm not sure Sadiq Youssef is the same way, but I don't think that anyone in this fight should be minus 620, because Sadiq Youssef, I saw a little bit of his of the Gomez fight that you're talking about. I saw a little bit of his other fights that were on the internet, and I don't rate him particularly highly based off them. I wouldn't put him at minus 620 against anyone. Minus 620 implies a very, very, very high chance of success. So I don't think he has that against probably a better grappler. But again, you can't really be sure because Suman Mkhitaryan hasn't beaten anyone good, and he's not beating them in ways that makes me trust his fundamentals at all. So it's not it's an avoid fight, but if you're going to put any money on it, it's pretty unquestionably Suman Mkhitaryan.
That's what I like to hear. In the next fight, this is the main card. That last fight was the main card as well. 6-fight main card, always a pleasure. We have Jim Crute, who is 8-0, taking on Paul Craig, who is 10-2. Jim Crute opened up as the favorite in this one at minus 245. Paul Craig at plus 185. Very little line movement on this one. Crute down to minus 250. Craig up to plus 210 in this one. I'm gonna pick the underdog Paul Craig to get this one done. Jim Crute, he looks like he's a powerful puncher. He looks pretty sloppy, honestly. He any type of good striker or puncher has a good chance against Paul Craig. His striking is not very good, but he finds a way to win. Obviously, like his last fight, one of the best comebacks, the biggest upset of the year. That's an official statistic. Plus 500 is what he closed at against Ankalaev. He also has losses though to Cleo Roundtree and Tyson Pedro. His chin is not the best. So if Jim Crute comes out here with some polished striking and picks the shots, and I think he could possibly get a finish. If he comes out swinging wild and crazy like he typically does, man, honestly, I kind of like Paul Craig's chances to pull out a win in some sort of grinding fashion. Whether he takes him down and gets a submission, he clips him with a punch, or maybe actually grinds out the full 15 minutes. So I guess I'm gonna side with Craig in this one.
I feel the opposite way. I think Paul Craig, he's a very, very limited talent, and I really do want to like Paul Craig. After that last comeback victory and having the greatest nickname in the history of Bear Jew is just, not really a stroke of genius because it doesn't mean anything, but it's really fun to say, and I really want to like him for it. But he's really bad on the feet. I think anyone who's going to come out and just swing their heart out, he's going to catch Craig going for one of those labored leg kicks that he went for against Khalil Roundtree, and he's obviously great from the bottom considering the Ankalaev win. Ankalaev is a legitimate light heavyweight prospect considering what he did to what's his name, the guy who lost to Sam Ali, Marcin Prachnio. Well, considering what he did to Marcin Prachnio, Ankalaev is a legitimate light heavyweight prospect, and Craig was able to steal that win. But I don't think that Jim Crude is going to lie down on top of Paul Craig. Jim Crude is going to, given his Dana White Contender Series fight, he's going to swing and punch Paul Craig in the face numerous times very hard. So Paul Craig, I think this is basically how I would cap the fight. Even though it probably includes that classic Tuesday Night Contender Series hype machine minus 100 or 200. I think this is a fair way to cap the fight at minus 250 plus 210 for Crude Craig, because Crude, he's stylistically very difficult for Paul Craig. Paul Craig isn't a great wrestler. Paul Craig is a great grappler, but betting against grapplers without great wrestling is pretty much rule number one in MMA when it comes to them facing good strikers. And Paul Craig has some of the worst striking in the game, second only to, of course, Ben Askren. So yeah, it's gonna be Crude for me on this one.
Nice. So again, in the welterweight division, we have one of the best fights all weekend. This fight and the Benavidez. Who's Benavidez?
Alex Perez.
Yeah, Alex Perez fight. This I believe is the most anticipated fight of the weekend. Jake Matthews, who is 14-3, taking on Anthony Rocco Martin, who is 14-4, previously known as Tony Martin. He switched his name up apparently. Jake Matthews opened up at minus 105. Anthony Rocco Martin minus 135 as the favorite. And it's since flipped. Anthony Martin is now the underdog at plus 105. And Jake Matthews is minus 125. He actually was a bit higher, if I'm correct. Martin maybe got up to plus 125 area. I was really impressed with Anthony Martin in his last fight against Ryan LaFleur. His striking looked good. His takedown defense looked good. He obviously scored a knockout in round 3. He showed some power. Really looked like he was coming into his own at 170. And his opponent, Jake Matthews, also looking really good in his last fight, beating Li Jingliang via decision. Oh no, actually wait, he fought since then. He fought Shiniso Ensai. Not really much to say about that. He kind of that was a squash match. Ran through him and choked him out in the first round. But, he's really looking good. His takedowns are looking on point. He, his top pressure looked really good against Li Jingliang. Obviously, he got that sub in his last fight. So, I don't know. Martin's going to be hard to submit, though. He's, I believe, a jiu-jitsu black belt himself. And he's, really good at getting out of bad positions. We saw that in the Nakamura fight. And some of his previous fights before. Let me think if I can remember which ones. OAM fight. He got his back taken in that one and wasn't submitted. So it's gonna be this one's gonna be really interesting. If Anthony Martin's takedown defense is on point and his scrambles are on point, I think he can win the striking exchanges in this fight. And I wouldn't really. I might actually have to hop on some action with him at plus money because Anthony Martin is going to be the pick to get the win.
Yeah, I caught Tony Martin at plus 130, which was really nice, and I think he gets this one done just because I don't rate Jake Matthews very highly at all. Like, it's weird to say that because Jake Matthews is legitimately good in his last few, but it's hard to know what to make of it, considering that the Li Jingliang fight just seemed to be like a gigantic physicality difference in my opinion. Because Jake Matthews just sort of realized that he was the biggest one of the bigger guys in the division. He realized that he was stronger than Li Jingliang, who would just kind of throw him around. And I think Anthony Rocco Martin, or Tony Martin, which is a lot easier to say, I think Tony Martin is going to be the sharper striker. Now, one question I have is, I believe Martin is an orthodox fighter, and Martin faced Ryan LaFleur, who is a southpaw, or at least he was for that fight. And Martin actually used a little bit of the Crow Cop game plan for that, but inverted. That is, from the orthodox position, he used the right straight to set up the head kick. Now, I think Anthony Martin is a decent enough striker when things don't always go his way, but I also don't know if the success he found against Ryan LaFleur was a symptom of that particular tactic. Because, I mean, Ryan LaFleur isn't a great striker, but he's, generally tough. He's been put out before, but only by guys like, Alex Oliveira, who is top 2 or 3 for raw power in the division. So I'm not sure that Martin is going to as decisively outstrike Jake Matthews, but I do feel fairly strongly that Tony Martin has the advantage on the feet.
So we seem to be on the same page of that one. I might just wait to see what his plus 3.5 points is, even though I expect that line to be pretty juiced. Who knows though? Who knows? So I believe that's going to move us along to Tyson Pedro, who is 7-2, taking on Shogun Rua, who is 25-11. The betting line for this one opened up Tyson Pedro at -210. Mauricio Shogun Rua at +160. The odds maker was drunk when he made this line. Tyson Pedro all the way down to -460. Mauricio Shogun Rua up to +365. Huge line movement for Tyson Pedro. Go ahead and start this one off, Sriram.
I would not have Tyson Pedro at -460 against anyone, because I think Tyson Pedro, he's okay. I mean, first of all, his grappling is a little bit overrated, considering that he choked out Khalil Roundtree, who basically anyone can choke out near his size, and he took out what's his name, Saparbek Safarov at UFC 221, which was it was fairly impressive, but not really, considering that it was kind of a jank submission that OSP in turn got on him. And I don't think that Tyson Pedro's raw physicality, his youth, his probable striking advantage is enough to overcome just the sheer stupidity he showed in his last fight. And it's pretty clear that he fucked up hard somewhere against OSP. And it was when he decided to grapple the more physical grappler for no reason, as he had OSP very severely hurt. I think Tyson Pedro wins this on the feet, decides to grapple, and gets triangled by Shogun Rua because, Tyson Pedro's fight IQ is just lacking in every single way.
I don't think it's possible for him to make that much of a bonehead move again. Like he said, but here's the thing: in that fight where he made that retard move of taking OSP down and getting armbarred, those shots that he landed on OSP would put Shogun out, no doubt in my mind. That I don't even know what kind of punch it was that hit OSP that rocked him, and that head kick that OSP just ate like cotton candy. Those shots are putting Shogun out all day. He just looks like a shell of his former self. He was knocked out viciously, like 3 or 4 months ago, dude. Like, who the fuck let Shogun take this fight, man? Against a young, up-and-coming, super powerful guy in Tyson Pedro. Obviously, his fight IQ is still developing. He only has 9 fights in the UFC, or in MMA. Even less in the UFC. So that's a big question mark. But I really expect Tyson Pedro to win this one by knockout in the first round.
I think one thing is that Shogun, and I actually picked Shogun over Smith, but that's just because I don't think Smith is very good at all. But I think one thing that kind of made that happen was Shogun Rua had been facing guys that weren't exactly going to out-athlete him. Like guys like Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson's a decent athlete, but he also has basically no chin, and Shogun was able to drop him multiple times. He faced Jean Vellante, who is basically the definition of a light heavyweight softball, which is a division basically full of softballs. So I think Shogun's success in the last few years has been inflated by favorable matchups. And facing an athletic guy, I think it's entirely possible that Pedro puts him out. Like outside of the memes, it's hard not to favor Tyson Pedro here. The problem is if Mauricio Rua ends up actually having a chin, like if Ohua like goes Arlovsky for this one and somehow grew back his chin, I think Pedro is pretty fucked because Pedro is not going to have the discipline. He's not going to have the adaptability to really deal with Shogun, even a very severely diminished Shogun, in my opinion. Because I mean, raw athleticism can only take you so far. So if I were to bet here, it would be like zero point 0.2 units on Mauricio Hua for just for fun, especially since I think his chin is just gone. But I think that there's an outside, not insignificant chance that Pedro could piss this one away.
Yeah, so that point about the resurgence, where he could come out looking like Arlovsky, that already happened. I think he, got knocked out by OSP, and then he lost, also coming off that loss to Dan Henderson. He came back and he won 3 fights in a row, looking great. And he even scored a knockout in that one. But he fought 3 guys who don't hit very hard. I guess Nogueira hits pretty hard, but Corey Anderson, not really known for his knockout power, and John Vellante has pillows for fists. So, that was his resurgence. I honestly, same thing. I honestly thought he could have pull off the updog or the underdog victory.
What's up, Doug?
The underdog victory against Anthony Smith, but he went down hard and fast in that one. I really just I don't know. Tyson Pedro's a bro though. I listen to his podcast. He's fucking hilarious. So that might be playing a little bit into my favoritism of him, but I really expect him and hope he gets this one done. Interesting fight in the co-main event. We have a heavyweight division. Mark Hunt, who is 13-1, taking on Justin Willis, who is 7-1. The betting line for this one opened up Mark Hunt as the waiting for the page to load favorite at -155. Justin Willis at the +115 underdog. Since then, more action has come in on Justin Willis, pushing him to the favorite at -120. Mark Hunt up to +100. These guys are Mark Hunt, obviously legend. He's on the very outs of his career. I believe this is his last fight. He announced that it will be, so it should be, but who knows if it'll actually be. He's looked good in the past couple of years for a 44-year-old. I gotta say that he got viciously knocked out by Alistair Overeem last year, and he bounced back right away with a win over one of the best guys in the division, Derek Lewis. He's only lost like one out of his last, or actually 2 out of his last 10 or 11 fights in the UFC. That was a really impressive win that he bounced back from a knockout really quick within 3 months. So then he obviously had that tough fight against Curtis Blades, where he still landed on the chin of Blades, rocked him a little bit, but eventually lost in the wrestling of that one. And then his last fight was just a total choke job where he had Alexei Olenek really hurt, was chewing up his leg with leg kicks, and then somehow tripped over his own feet, got taken down, and tapped out in the first round. So super disappointing performance from him in that one. But he still throws with power. His leg kicks are still really heavy. Obviously, his punches are going to be heavy until he's probably 70 or 80 years old. And Justin Willis is a much lower level heavyweight than the opponents that he's been facing. The dude lost a decision to Chase Sherman, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check that. No, he won a decision, with Chase Sherman, but he still couldn't knock him out. That's Sherman's terrible. It's I haven't really watched much tape on Lewis or on Willis, only a very limited amount, so I can't fully say that I'm confident in Mark Hunt. Although I think that there's a lot of momentum in Mark Hunt's favor. The fact that this is very close to his hometown, it's going to be his last fight. That place is going to be going bananas for him. He knows that one last walk-off KO could really mean a walk-off from the sport, and he knows that he has a decent matchup ahead of him in this one. So I think that Mark Hunt will get the win in this one.
I just can't trust Mark Hunt after that Olenek fight. I mean, he got rocked by Oleinik's wrist bone, and then he just never looked the same. And I think Oleinik was about as easy as an opponent it gets for Mark Hunt. I was on Mark Hunt very easily when the odds were closer than minus 300 for Mark Hunt. So the fact that he lost against a guy with zero striking defense, very bad striking offense, and actually very subpar takedowns just suggests to me that Mark Hunt is just shot. He's done, and that makes this a very good choice to retire. Now facing Justin Willis, who's younger, who's actually, in my opinion, a better heavyweight prospect than the main event in Tai Tuivasa, and a fairly powerful striker when his chin has pretty clearly cracked, is something that I really do think Justin Willis gets this one because okay, Justin Willis isn't high volume. Justin Willis isn't particularly technically interesting to me, and his knockout over Alan Crowder is pretty much the only highlight of his career after a tepid slog against James Mulheron and the decision over Chase Sherman. But Mark Hunt's chin being gone is a pretty bad prospect for someone who's just about as low volume and who has relied on resilience for a long time in his career. So I think Justin Willis cracks him early, gets him out of there. And that depresses me to say, but that's what I think.
So you think he's gonna test the chin and knock him out?
Yeah, I think Willis gets the finish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think that the past couple guys to knock him out, Junior Dos Santos, Fabricio Verdum, Stevie Miocic, Alistair Overeem. I just don't think that homeboy Justin Willis is in that contention with those guys. But it would
Neither is
shock me.
Olenek.
That's true, but he didn't knock him out.
Yeah, but he still got, hit with a wrist bone and did the chicken dance.
Yeah, well, I
One
think
of our
he
favorite
tripped
fighters
over
would say.
he tripped over his or he folded over his own ankle and rolled it and fell down. I think is what happened in that fight. But regardless, he had the dude so fucking hurt, man. He was wobbling on one leg. Like, dude, all you had to do is throw one more leg kick or fake a leg kicking and throw the overhand, and he still somehow found a way to lose that fight. That was just astounding.
Overall, Hunt looked bad in that fight. I think, okay, I mean, overall, I think the guy that took a flush Crow Cop head kick, getting knocked out by by that Overeem knee, for example, isn't a horrible sign because Overeem has absolutely brutal knees, but it also isn't a good sign considering that Hunt has always been known for durability. And he faced Curtis Blades, who isn't a great power puncher, and Hunt didn't do a bad job in that fight considering his skill set. And then he faced Alexei Olenek, and Olenek again is about as favorable as an opponent as he gets. Justin Willis is far less favorable for a full-fledged Mark Hunt than Alexei Olenek is. And the fact that Hunt lost to Olenek, I just can't trust him anymore at all.
Yeah,
Justin
I'm not
Willis
putting
is
any
young,
money on
he's
him for
hungry,
sure.
and he can crack. Justin Willis, in my opinion, again, probably Justin Willis and Walt Harris are better prospects than Tai Tuivasa.
Interesting. We'll move on to the main event. In the main event, we have Junior Dos Santos, who is 19-5, taking on Tai Tuivasa, who is 10-0. The betting line opened up in this one. Junior Dos Santos as the favorite at minus 135, Tai Tuivasa at minus 105. Since then, people are betting down Dos Santos to minus 150. Tuivasa open up to plus 130 in this one. So, go ahead and continue what you were saying about Tuivasa. You think you're just sounds like you're not sold on him at all, correct?
Yeah, I'm not. I think Tai Tuivasa is kind of a symptom of the UFC really wanting that sort of Anzac prospect for heavyweight because, it's a new market, especially with the kind of Robert Whitaker and Tyson Pedro, and especially with the retirement of Mark Hunt, you kind of need someone to fill that niche, right? And I don't think that Tai Tuivasa, who's been sold as Mark Hunt's protege, is really anything as special as Mark Hunt was in his prime. Because I think people underestimate how special Mark Hunt was, right? Mark Hunt, he was a legitimate great kickboxer with a legitimately iron chin who could crack and who made great technical strides later in his career. And Tai Tuivasa at this stage is raw athleticism. He's raw athleticism and swarming bad fighters. And he is a ridiculous lack of cardio. In one of his amateur fights, he gassed out incredibly fiercely. I think in one of his pro fights, he gassed out pretty badly as well. But his gas tank is just not up to snuff. And I think that contrasts with Junior Dos Santos, who is not only active with the body jab, but who's also coming off a 5-round decision where he kept a reasonable work rate. He didn't look great. He got cracked a couple of times, but he kept a reasonable work rate in that fight over 25 minutes. I think this fight favors Junior Dos Santos, but I'm also a little bit worried about Junior just because, Tai Tuivasa's a swarmer and he's going to back Junior up and Junior's going to get stuck against the fence and maybe get, elbowed to death. But I think most of the factors in this fight favors Junior Dos Santos. He's a lot sharper in open space. He's a better boxer by a very, very long shot. He has a legitimately good jab that should be able to keep the swarming of Tai Tuivasa at bay. I think minus 150 is a pretty good spot for him, considering that there isn't, again, a great reason to trust him. Like, Blagoy Ivanov is basically a no-name in MMA, and Dos Santos didn't look great. But the fact that he got the job done fairly decisively just makes me think that Tai Tuivasa he has an uphill battle.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. He again, I like Tuivasa a lot because the podcast and everything. Was really loved his win against Rashad Coulter. That was a really fun fight, and of course he beat up on Cyril Asker pretty good. But he Arn Tartalovsky, that fight was razor thin. I would honestly have to go back and rescore that one. I remember it being really really close, and I think betting on Arlovsky by decision. But I don't think I was too confident in it happening. I didn't think he was going to get gifted it. So like I said, can't be too confident on that decision. But, everything you're saying is great. Yeah, Dos Santos is a much better boxer, fought better competition, has gone the 5 rounds before, gone the 5 rounds really recently, against a guy who gasses late, who gasses early, doesn't have a good cardio at all, is relatively unproven, hasn't really fought anybody too good. So minus 150, you rarely say it is, but that's a really good price for a favorite. I think, if I would bet him at those odds, but honestly, I can see people maybe betting Tuivasa a little more as the fight gets closer. Who knows if Aussie money is a thing or not. So I expected Dos Santos to get this one done either by decision or round 3, 4, 5 knockout.
Yeah, I'm guessing decision just because Tuivasa looks fairly durable, and Dos Santos by decision is plus 259 right now. So I think that's a very good bet considering that Dos Santos is the favorite, and Dos Santos hasn't really hunted for a finish in a long time. But with Tuivasa's cardio issues, I wouldn't recommend putting a ton on it because Dos Santos hitting him with body jabs might make him have a heart attack. But I think Dos Santos is the value bet on this card, to be honest. Even as a favorite, I think Dos Santos is the value bet on this card. Basically, everything in this fight favors him, except for the fact that he won his last one, which means that he's probably going to lose this one because that's how his career is gone.
I saw that
for a long time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think his maybe minus 5.5 points line will be a good line to bet on because if it goes to decisions, I see it being very lopsided. But I honestly could see him get the finish in 3, 4, 5, 2, like I said. So. Good fight. Good fight though. The main card in this one is really good. The prelims are absolutely brutal, honestly. But luckily, I'm looking forward to that Youssef Mokhtarian fight. Matthews and Martin should be a really really good one. And then the top 3 fights are all going to be really good. 3 big Aussie, New Zealand guys. That place is probably going to be jumping. If you saw Robert Whittaker beat Derek Brunson in Australia or New Zealand when he fought, that was one of the craziest crowds I've ever seen in my entire life. So if some of the Aussies are able to get it done, I honestly don't even know if they're Aussie or New Zealand I'm pretty sure they're pretty simultaneous. But regardless, this one should be a good card. And we've been talking for a couple, almost 2 hours. But we can't go without saying a few words about Chuck versus Tito happening this past weekend. So
must we?
did you watch live? That's my question.
No, I did not.
Interesting. I was at the mountains with my friends and we had our PS4 hooked up and I went on the PS4 browser, found a stream, and threw it on the TV, and it was streaming great, even though we were in the middle of nowhere, and we all had a good laugh watching that fight. Me and 9 other guys. I was excited that it captivated them. They knew who Liddell was, and they wanted to see him fight at 48 years old. When it's expected, obviously, I thought he was going to go down on the first hard punch that landed, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, nothing to say about that.
Yeah, no, but
That was
a
funny. Failure by the licensing commission. That was uncomfortable to hear about. I can't imagine watching it live and being if someone were a gigantic Chuck fan and watched that live, it's just kind of a bastardization of his legacy. And it's sad. It should not have happened. I think that's all that really needs to be said.
Yep, 100%. It just happened. It's unfortunate the UFC didn't, keep Chuck around. He was supposed to have a quote-unquote lifetime position with the UFC. He was supposed to have a job for the rest of his life, working with the company that he pretty much dedicated his life to. And then when they sold to WME, he gets kicked to the curb, and then a couple years later, he's fighting again. So it's a cruel cycle, but you're right. That's all we need to say about that one. And after 2 hours, it's definitely time to conclude this one. So, my man 3Round, thanks a lot for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
We'll have to have you back soon. Hope your boy RDA comes through this weekend. Top 10 fighter of all time. Hopefully he pulls off the upset victory this weekend and make us a little bit of cash. So with that being said, that is going to be all for episode 42 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. And ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious being, thank you for tuning into the podcast, and I will catch you guys next week for UFC 231. Peace.